Hi, I'm Liv and welcome back to the Book Nook. Hey guys, so I'm filming this video straight off the back of the last video, which is my February haul, so if you said anything nice in response to that one in the comments, then thank you. If you've said anything nasty, then screw you. So for this video I'm going to wrap up the books I read in February. I don't know why I can't say it like a normal person today. Not my best reading month, 7 books in a month, well I suppose that's okay, it's not a competition. But as I said in my last video, head's been all over the place, not been super ready, but 7 books for a short month, that'll do. So let's have a little look at what I read, shall we? Are you sitting comfortably? Is that copyrighted? So first up, I read a book that everyone has been talking about for the last year or so, and that is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. Now this book, whew, what to say about this book? So it's about a woman called Vanessa Y who was 15 years old when she first had sex with her English teacher, and then years later someone comes out and makes an allegation against him, and it causes her to finally kind of examine that relationship with her English teacher and all these sort of thoughts and how she saw the relationship back then versus how she sees it now. And this book, again, because I'm out of practice of talking about books, I'm not going to be very coherent, but this book, for me, very much like Gabriel Tallant's My Absolute Darling, which I know there were a lot of issues with. It's one of those books that the whole time I was reading it like, don't like it. But that's kind of the point. It forces you to confront really uncomfortable notions of relationships and things like this, and it was just incredibly impactful. It's not an easy read in terms of content, it's not something that you read and like enjoy, but it's an easy read in that it's so compelling you don't want to put it down. Incredibly moving, incredibly impactful, gets under your skin, super compelling. It's weird to sort of recommend a book that's so uncomfortable and so gross, but you need to read this book, really. Next up in February is actually I was going to say it was my first DNF of the year, but actually it's my second DNF of the year. I don't think I mentioned that I DNF'd Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik in Winter Book Hibernation because I started reading it and I just found it way too slow, and the depictions of the characters I just found really uncomfortable. I don't know whether that's the point of it. Anyway, I haven't really mentioned my DNFs. Maybe at the end of the year I'll do a DNF video. Who knows? Ah, it's a Sunday and the neighbours are using a power saw. But my second DNF of the year is one that I wasn't expecting to DNF in lots of ways, but actually when I think about it, I was never going to get on with this book, and that is Selena Godden's Mrs. Death, Mrs. Death. Now you guys may remember when I picked this book up, I was really excited about it, really excited about Selena Godden's writing, and it's been raved about. Loads of people are absolutely loving this book, and I can totally see why, but for me, not to get all therapy, but it's definitely something I need to confront in therapy, my whole relationship with death and thinking about death and dying and being dead. Yeah. I know I'm not alone with this, and it isn't really like a particularly crazy concept to be like, I don't like talking and thinking about death. But it's one of those things where if I'm lying in bed and my head starts going off about thinking about like death and dying and being dead, I have a panic attack. So really reading a book that is literally about people dying and the notion of death and what happens after, it was too close to a lot of the kind of fears and things that I am not ready to deal with. And all of the kind of poetic bits about the fear of death and here is death, I was just reading them. Like, there was no chance I was ever going to connect with this book really on reflection. So I'm sure the writing is gorgeous, I'm sure the styling is beautiful, I'm sure it's a very moving and incredible book, but it was never going to be for me. This is very much a case of it's not you, it's me. So please don't not read this book if you've heard really good things about it and think it might be up your street, but just be aware if you are someone who is very triggered by thinking about death and dying, probably not the book for you, because it wasn't the book for me. I was just reading the book at arm's length within the first couple of pages, and within about 20-25 pages I was like, this is just not going to be an enjoyable ride, this is not going to be a fun use of my time, this is going to induce me into many panic attacks, let's put this book away. Having said that, my next book was then The Death of Francis Bacon by Max Porter, but a little bit different because it's not actually talking about like the philosophy of death and being dead. So you guys know that I love Max Porter, Grief is a Thing with Feathers, and Lanny, Lanny. And this is a very slim little book exploring the last 7 days of Francis Bacon's life, and it's sort of him in this drug-induced haze talking about his paintings and his life, and it's one of these books that I would say if you are someone who knows Francis Bacon's paintings and you are into art and all that, it'll make a lot more sense to you. I know shit all about Francis Bacon, and like when I was reading it I was maybe like googling some of his pictures to try and get into it, but because I don't really know much about Francis Bacon at all, there was a disconnect. So it's utterly, utterly beautiful. Very much recommended if you know someone who's into like art and the history of art as well as Max Porter's writing, because it will probably have a lot more impact for them. But for me, there was just so much of a disconnect because I don't really know much of the subject matter at all. But still, beautiful writing. You know Max. Next up, I read Legendborn by Tracy Deonn, and I read this one on the Kindle, so there's a picture. This book was fucking amazing, guys. I loved it. It's the first in definitely a duology, if not a trilogy, if not more, please, more, greedy, nom nom nom. It is a book about a young black girl who goes to college and discovers that basically she has these crazy witchy magic powers, but are somehow linked to Arthurian legend, but are also linked to her black ancestors, and it's just, Having fairly recently read Leigh Bardugo's Ninth House, it has very similar vibes, and it's all these kind of secret societies at an American college and all the history and the magic that's buried under that history, very similar vibes to that, but it just had so much more than that. The magic was awesome and cool, and the characters were so compelling, and you don't know the motives of lots of them. It was just so brilliant. Really cool use of Arthurian legend and the magics, and exploring the difference in one strand of magic and how it's looked at through Arthurian legend and sort of whiteness, and how it's looked at through the black ancestors and black history, and where those intersect in this one character and the power that she has. It's just freaking amazing. I highly recommend Legendborn by Tracy Deonn, and I cannot wait for more. Nom 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 nom. Next up, I read Elif Shafak's 10 minutes 38 seconds in This Strange World. Why am I holding it like that? Hold it like a normal person. I've never read any Elif Shafak before. I've got her little non-fiction How to Stay Sane in an Age of Division, but I haven't read that yet. Never read any of her previous novels. Had been seeing this one doing the rounds on Instagram, and I know it was a Waterstones Book of the Month a few months ago, which is probably nearly like a year ago now, because what is time other than a nebulous blob that nobody can keep track of anymore? And this is another book dealing with death, so it's weird that I had such a visceral reaction to the Selena Godden and maybe not to the Max Porter or to this one, but I think it's just the different ways they dealt with it. But this is a book that explores the life of Tequila Layla, who is a prostitute in Istanbul, explores her life, and it does it in the first half of the book through the last 10 minutes 38 seconds after she's been killed, and as her body shuts down, and it goes through all these memories that build on her life and her friends' lives, and then the second half is sort of more dealing with her friends and what happens after her death. And it was one of these books where I kind of enjoyed it, but it was just kind of quite slow. And I don't know, maybe Elif Shafak's writing is just not for me. Maybe this kind of book is just not my kind of book. Like, it was alright. There were some really moving moments in there. There were some gorgeous descriptions, don't get me wrong. The prose is luminous in that sense, and the evocation of place was beautiful in there, but there was just something in it that for me didn't connect. Like, it was okay. You might enjoy it more than me. You might enjoy it less than me. That's what subjectivity is. But I enjoyed it. It was just pretty slow and just not my fave. Speaking of faves though, I then read a book by one of my faves, John McGregor, and that is Lean Fall Stand, his latest one. Again, thanks to the guys at Fourth Estate for this. So at the beginning of the book, there are 3 guys in the Antarctic doing some exploration and mapping and things. There's a huge storm, shit goes wrong, spoiler alert, 1 guy dies, 1 guy has a stroke. The rest of the book is then dealing with the character who has had a stroke, his recovery, his wife becoming his carer and how she feels about that, his recovery itself. Now this book was good, I really enjoyed it. It wasn't quite amazing. It kind of seemed torn between what it wanted to do. The first half of the book, it then started hinting at like what went on during that storm, what happened, how did this guy die, did somebody do something wrong? And then there were kind of like hints of it through the second half of the book and talking about the inquiry, and it kind of seemed like it maybe wanted to go down the route of something had really gone wrong and somebody had done something wrong and people were covering up for other people. It seemed like this kind of mysterious kind of Antarctic mystery vibe going on, but then it didn't fully tap into that. The writing around exploring like the actual having a stroke and losing the ability to communicate was very impactful. Obviously I've never had a stroke, I don't know enough about it, but for the layperson who knows shit all about it, it was really well done. You know, being in this character's head as he's having a stroke and losing the ability to communicate, losing words, losing the ability to connect words, losing the ability to move and make connections between his brain and his movements was really unsettling and very well wrought. And then the second half of the book, as I say, exploring his recovery and his wife becoming his carer and having it thrust upon them that their relationship pre him having a stroke and the strain that was already on it and what that does then when one partner has to become a carer for somebody, which is a very real reality for millions of people across the world every day. It was really moving, but it kind of felt like, as I say, like there was this other book in there that it was almost like John McGregor couldn't decide quite what he wanted to do with it, and whether he wanted to go down that Antarctic mystery route, which I kind of wanted it to. Every time we got close to it, I was like, oh, okay, we're going to dig into this and we're going to find out what, oh, okay, never mind then. So a bit of a mixed bag in this one. As usual, I love John McGregor's writing and his power and way with words, and as I say, explicitly linked to this loss of communication while having a stroke was beautiful. Very readable, as is John McGregor, but as I say, bit of a disconnect. Felt like there was another book in there that wanted to come out and I kind of wanted it too. Next up, I read 3/5 by John Versio, which was published by Pushkin Press and I believe won the Edgar Award for Best New Novel, crime novel, I think. This is a book about a 22-year-old young man who is biracial but passing for white, and his white best friend gets out of prison and has basically become a Nazi. He ends up killing a young black man while the main character is with him, and it explores this guy's conflict between his identity, and he discovers who his father is, and the links between his father and the victim of the hate crime, and the relationship with his best friend and what has happened to him, the radicalization of him in prison, and all of these things that happen, their relationship, their friendship, hints of something more. It was beautiful and gorgeous and highly deserving of its award win and all of the praise it's getting. The only thing I wanted was I wanted more of it. And it's weird, for someone who recently has been struggling reading, it's almost like once I do finally get into a book, it finishes too soon and I'm like, oh, okay. So that literally is the only bad thing I can say about it, is that I wanted more. And I feel like that's never a bad thing to say about a book. And finally for the month, I read Jacqueline Woodson's Red at the Bone. I have tried like 7 times to say her name. Something about starting to say Jacqueline, I go into Jacqueline Wilson, and that is not this book at all. This is a book that explores the family history of Melody, and it starts with her coming out ceremony at 16 and kind of unfurls backwards and forwards in time, dealing with her family line. It's a book that looks at identity, it looks at class, it looks at race, it looks at all of these kind of prejudices and assumptions, where they all intersect. It looks at family history and the kind of baggage that we bring with us, or what we choose not to bring with us. It was really fantastic, but again, I found myself wanting more of it. It felt like it was over too quickly. It felt like there was so much more that could have been explored, and I just found myself wanting more because the writing is so brilliant and it's just so compelling and readable that I just wanted more. Again, much like with 3/5, it was like as soon as I'd settle into it, it was already over. But having said that, I do appreciate that it is kind of this like miniature family epic, and it's condensed down, and not every family epic and exploration of history and identity and family lines and all of this has to be this sprawling 600-page beast. So I do understand that that's kind of maybe the point of it, that it's condensed down and an examination of why these stories often end up being so big when they don't need to be. I don't know. But Red at the Bone, highly enjoyable, has definitely given me a thirst for more Jacqueline Woodson, not Wilson. Can't do it. It's like muscle memory. When you're a kid and you say Jacqueline Wilson, Jacqueline Wilson, Jacqueline Wilson so much, you can't then say any other name, especially when it's so similar. So that was my reading in February. I say a bit of a mixed bag, and February itself as a month has just felt so kind of, it's like this weird time dilation thing again that I know has been happening for like most of the year, but it just felt like both long and short and interminable and over before you knew it, and I definitely didn't want more. I finished reading Red at the Bone like 2 weeks ago and just found myself totally unable to pick up another book since then. I did read in bed a little bit every now and again if I could kind of get my head around it. Echoes of Valhalla by John Carl Helgeson, which is a book that I've kind of got on my nightstand, which is exploring the kind of echoes of Viking history and Viking myth through modern kind of culture and media, which is really interesting, and that's one that I'm just going to be chipping away at through the year. I can't remember whether I've mentioned it before, but other than that, I've just not really been reading anything for the last 2 weeks. But in the last couple of days, I've started reading Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse, a little bit of a teaser there for what will be coming up on the March wrap-up whenever I bloody do that, and I'm really enjoying that one so far. So have a little chat with me in the comments below if you've read any of these books, or all of these books, or none of these books. Just have a little chat with me. Feeling a little bit more human for having filmed these videos, so thank you for bearing with me while I'm word vomiting, verbal diarrhea, and whatnot. Why do I keep rolling my R's? As I said in my last video, mentally I'm not really up to much more than hauls and wrap-ups at the moment, which I go from 1 minute really beating myself up about, and the next minute I'm like, you know what, it's cool, if that's all you can do, just do it. But I do have videos that I know I've been talking about for years that I would like to make, but if they're becoming a stick with which to beat myself, then there's no point in even trying, so who knows. My point is, mental health is real, y'all, and look after yours and your own. So again, I hope you're keeping safe and well. I know that things are potentially opening back up again, and it's very exciting, but also just be safe and careful, please. As per usual, have a little chat with me in the comments down below. I will see you for another video at some point when I'm feeling more video-y and brain spacey and all that jazz. Thanks very much for watching. Have a lovely time, day, night, weekend, week, day, month, March, long time. nice, be good, bye.